Very good afternoon to you. A warm welcome from Canary Wharf. We will be hearing from the two main men very, very shortly. Vasiliy Lomachenko and Luke Campbell, ahead of them going head-to-head at the O2, a sold-out O2 arena on Saturday night. I've got Spencer Oliver and Adam Smith with me. Looking forward to this one so much, guys. We've got Loma on UK shores, but is he in with a guy who could potentially pull off a massive upset here?
Listen, we've been speaking to Lomachenko earlier in the week, and he sees this as a big threat. You know, I think that he respects, you know, the Ukrainians respect it for other Olympic champions. He's seen what Luke Campbell done. They've run parallel together as amateurs, winning European Games, Olympic Games. He knows that Campbell's got a high boxing IQ. He knows that he's got a size advantage, a reach advantage. Lomachenko's not taking this fight lightly. He thinks it's going to be one of his hardest contests.
Make the case, Adam, for us in terms of what Luke Campbell has and what he has to offer in order to pull off what would, as I say, be an amazing upset.
It would be an amazing upset. Not many people are giving Luke much of a chance outside of his close-knit team, and they're a great close-knit team. You know, the McGuigans around him, obviously George Groves. It's a lot of experience there too. And remember, he's been sparring a great deal with Josh Taylor, who is probably the emerging fighter of the last 2 or 3 years. Wonderful southpaw technician. So, look, he will be in the best possible place. Luke has been a fantastic fighter from a very young kid. You know, we were in the Boxing Writers Club. We were giving him awards when he was in his teens. He's probably the best amateur these shores have ever produced. And I think people are a bit disappointed he's not become a world champion to date. I picked him to win Olympic gold in London, and he was brilliant that tournament, as was Lomachenko. But remember, Luke, as Spencer said, has got that weight advantage. He's also got the height and reach advantage. He's a lovely crafted southpaw, and he's got a couple of sneaky shots to add to his repertoire, and now he's got that experience. He's gone over to LA, he pushed Linares close, and very difficult time with his father passing as well just before that, so he's mentally strong, and I think I like what I see about Luke Campbell in this build-up. I like the fact that he's very relaxed. He's not looking at Vasiliy Lomachenko as some sort of great. He's looking at him as a guy that, you know, he shared breakfast with at some of these tournaments, that he's seen very close up, and a smaller man. Of course he knows how good he is, and all the team know how good he is, and they know how tough that is. But he goes in with confidence, and I think it's all about the first 2 or 3 rounds. If he can make some sort of impression on the fight, on Lomachenko, then it could get interesting. You know, Anthony Crolla couldn't do that. I've been speaking a lot to Anthony, who's working with us this week, and he said, you know, you think he's good, you get in the ring and you realize he's exceptional. And that might be the problem for Luke. I think Luke will become a world champion. I'm just not sure, and I'm really not sure it will happen on Saturday night.
We spoke to Luke, didn't we, the other night? He was talking to us, explaining some of the rather mischievous comments he's come out with towards some journalists about the preparation that he's had for these fights in terms of sparring partners and what have you. But he did actually confirm, didn't he, that he hasn't actually watched any of Lomachenko's fights during this camp. He's left it all to Shane McGuigan to come up with a plan to try and win this fight.
Well, enough of it.
Yeah,
enough of it already,
and also speaking to him, I spoke to him last night about that as well, and he says, listen, how do you prepare for someone like Lomachenko? Because we don't actually know what he's going to do. Because I asked him about his various sparring partners, has he got people that are sort of very unorthodox, etc. He said, no, I've just been going away with my business. He's really looking forward to this challenge. Yeah. And that's the most important thing. The guy, as Adam rightly said, looks so relaxed through the week, and even speaking to him last night, you know, he's looking forward to it. He loves that opportunity. Because I said to him, you know what, you've got to be quite an unlucky guy to get a former pound-for-pound star in Linares for your first world title shot, and then getting Lomachenko for your second. I said, that's a difficult ask. Yeah. There's been world champions a lot less caliber than Luke Campbell before that have won world titles, but I'm with Adam. I think that Luke Campbell definitely does win a world title. Whether it's on Saturday night, I'm unsure, but I think if Campbell's going to win the fight, he's got to drag Lomachenko into a dogfight, and he's got to, but by doing that, he leaves himself vulnerable.
And it's something that's not naturally in his style. I think they've been working on that and sort of bringing in sparring partners that they can sort of, you know, back up and maybe use his size, but that's just not natural to do. What he does naturally is brilliant. Here's Andy Clark just joining us, and look, I don't know what you think, Andy, about making the case for Luke for Saturday night, but you know, it's whether he can just rely on that natural talent, his boxing talent, because we know how brilliant Lomachenko is in that, or whether he has to do something he's never done before and rough him up and get him out of his groove and try something different with that height and reach advantage.
I think he does. We were talking about this yesterday, Spence, and I think he's got to be bold. He's got to gamble. He's got to put himself open to possibly getting stopped himself. it's a fine line he has to tread, because just to hit Lomachenko, you've got to be a skillful fighter, which he is.
Yeah.
But I don't think you could go into this fight thinking, I'm going to outpoint him. Because if you're going to say you're going to outpoint him, you're saying you're going to outbox him. And I don't think he can be outboxed. Well, so I think the motivation has to be very ambitious. You have to say to yourself, my mission is to go in there and stop him. Now, to do that, you've got to hit him hard, regularly. And no one's really managed to do that yet. But he does have a lot of self-belief, Luke Campbell, and he does have a very high skill level. But you'll know this better than us. That self-belief, sometimes with fighters you see it kind of evaporate on the ring walk. Sometimes you see it go on the first bell. Sometimes after 3 or 4 rounds you see it dissipate, and then they start to think, okay, I just want to get through the rounds now. He has to believe he can win and be trying to win every second he's in there.
Well, this is the difference with Luke Campbell. His career is that he's a winner. So he will believe, and even after 3 or 4 rounds, he will believe. And like we said, he's accepted this as a challenge. He knows what he's going into. And I like the way that he's been speaking through the week as well, about talking about having to get, down and dirty, getting into a dogfight. He realises that he's got to do that. He said, looking at the qualities, he knows his boxing IQ might not be as good as Lomachenko's. His punch power might not be as good as Lomachenko's. His foot movement might not be as good. So how do I win the fight? Speed of punch. He's got a good left hand. And Shane McGuigan's been working a lot in the gym. We saw him a few weeks ago, actually, a few weeks out, and they were working on sitting down on their punches, really loading up with the shots, straight left hands through the middle. And I think that's the game plan. I think that they know that, they may have to come from behind at some point. They're going to try and keep it long, but I think ultimately they're going to be looking for the knockout, because they know that's really the only way he wins the fight. Because I can't see him outpointing the master like Lomachenko.
Big shots as early as possible. If you want to know how hard Luke Campbell hits, by the way, just ask Andy Scott. He'll be quite happy to tell you. But yeah, big shots and early as often as possible.
Yeah, I think that's it. We had George Groves on the podcast last week, and he was saying that when he started training with Shane McGuigan, what they started to work on was punching hard. And he showed us his knuckles, and he's got these ridges across his knuckles which he developed from doing pad work with Shane, and that's the key, isn't it? Is that hitting Lomachenko is not an easy thing to do. So when you do hit him, you've got to make sure it counts. You've got to make sure you hit him with weight, you hit him with as much volume as you can, but every time you land, it's got to mean something.
And we know Lomachenko has been flawed by Jorge Linares. He also has had shoulder problems. He also broke his hand against Anthony Crolla. Okay, I'm clutching a little bit here because I believe Lomachenko is sensational. But there are vulnerabilities in every fighter, however good they are. Floyd Mayweather, perfect career. As I've always said, the best fighter since Sugar Ray Leonard. However, Jose Luis Castillo in that first fight, in my opinion, won. So there can be a bogeyman, a different and difficult style for these greats, these exceptional talents, and you never know. It could be Luke Campbell.
Listen, we've had a year of upsets, big upsets. Anthony Joshua, Andy Ruiz Jr. more recently.
Would this be the biggest upset on British soil since Randolph Turpin?
I think it's the biggest upset, period, on British soil. I think Lomachenko is that good. And I think he's head and shoulders above the rest of the field. So if Campbell can pull it off, and that is a big if, but if he can, it's going to be a huge night.
And you're the historian. I mean, look, obviously we had a huge one this year. If you look at AJ Ruiz, probably going back to the likes of Oliver McCall or Hasim Ratman against Lennox Lewis in the heavyweight division. But can you remember anything here which would be as dramatic if Luke Campbell stopped Vasiliy Lomachenko on Saturday night?
I think you go back to that fight you just alluded to. You go back to Randolph Turpin against Sugar Ray Robinson back in 1951 at Earl's Court, and Sugar Ray Robinson was on a European tour. He'd had a lot of fights. He maybe didn't take Turpin as seriously as he should have done, but he was still renowned at the time as being the best fighter in the world. Most people, looking back now, still see him as being the best fighter ever to have laced up a pair of gloves, and that was a massive, massive upset. I was talking to Shane about this yesterday, and I threw that at him. Would this be the biggest upset since then? And he said what you said. He said that if they could do it, this would be the biggest upset on British soil by a British fighter, or by a British fighter anywhere. When we think about overseas, we always think about Lloyd Honeyghan, don't we? Kirkland Lang against Roberto Duran, John Stracey against Jose Napolez, and those kinds of fights. But
Danny Williams-Tyson was a pretty dramatic one.
Yeah, it was. I think the difference with Tyson, though, was that he was
Yes.
coming to the end, Tyson, then.
Yeah.
And although Tyson was expected to win, Danny Williams really was on the rise. And we know what a good fighter Danny Williams actually was. But we've got Lomachenko here who's improving at a rapid force. Like both these guys won Olympic golds in 2012. They both turned over, and Luke Campbell's career has sort of been slower development. But Lomachenko, as you alluded to, boxer of world title in his second fight, won one in his third fight, won 3 weight divisions. He's become a superstar. That's the difference. The guy has become, you got to be. He's up there with the real big names, with the Canelos and the Golovkins. He's a superstar of the sport.
Yeah, and Crawford as well. But for me, Lomachenko, for what he's done as an amateur as well, is better than all of them. I think he is exceptional. I mean, yeah, you look back at when Costas Hugh came over, and he was one of the pound-for-pound best, and most people thought he beat Ricky Hassan, and Ricky, found a way that night just to walk through punches, to drive himself to a victory, and Costa was pulled out at the end of the 11th round, and that was one of the most emotional and memorable nights we've ever had on Sky Sports. But Costas Hugh, there was an age thing. He was slightly on the slide. Lomachenko looks like he's getting better and better. Ask Nicholas Walters, ask Jorge Linares, ask Anthony Crolla. We've said earlier that Crolla is like, he's a very solid fighter. He's won world titles. He's been in with Linares for 24 rounds, and he said, I knew how good he was going to be, and then I got in and didn't realize he was unbelievable. And I think that may be what happens on Saturday night. But look, the people around Luke Campbell believe. George Groves really believes, and George Groves can pick fights. He's a bright guy. He's got a lot of experience himself. He's known Luke Campbell for a long time. Vasiliy Lomachenko's known Luke Campbell for a long time. He respects him. Spencer's right. He respects him. But that could be even more dangerous for Luke.
It's interesting, isn't it? We had a little bit of a debate yesterday, didn't we, about the top 3 pound-for-pound fighters in the world at the moment. The 3 of us that were talking picked Lomachenko as number 1. I mean, his legacy is assured, not only in terms of the titles he's won as a professional, but as an amateur as well. It begs the question, obviously he's wanting to go on and be undisputed champion at lightweight. What on earth can he possibly do after that? Does he keep defending those titles? Does he change to another weight division? He's already been in 3 as it is. And every time he goes up, he's trying to look for better quality opposition again and again and again. So where does he go after this?
It's a good question.
Well, as I understand it, he could probably still do featherweight. So his natural weight at the minute, I would say, is probably super featherweight. So lightweight's bigger than he really needs to be. So if he steps up to super lightweight, which is 140 pounds, so it's another 5 pounds, then all of a sudden he's looking at fighters like Josh Taylor, Jose Ramirez, Ivan Baranchyk, who Josh Taylor beat, Regis Prograis, who Taylor's boxing in the World Boxing Super Series final. I think that might just be a bit too big for him. Yeah. To be honest, I don't really want to see him get beaten because he stepped up too far in weight, because you look at recent times and when fighters do this, it doesn't end well. Kell Brook tried it against Golovkin, it didn't work. Mikey Garcia tried it recently against Errol Spence, and it didn't work.
Okay, what about Manny Pacquiao? Manny Pacquiao rose through the weights. No one thought he could go from right down there to right up there, and he did, and he blew people away at welterweight. So, there is evidence that can be done. I think what Andy's saying, though, is that he's a natural feather and super featherweight. I think Manny Pacquiao was never a flyweight. He was never really. He was always dragged down to that, and over the years he put on the weight. And I think it probably would be harder for Lomachenko up at a light welterweight limit. He's naturally a small guy. Luke is much bigger than him as a lightweight. And I think it would be a shame to see him get just beaten because of size. And normally, they say the good big guy beats the good little guy. And he's an exceptional little guy, but you wouldn't want to see him fight a bigger guy who really wouldn't be able to lace his boots down in the featherweight division or something. So it's a tough one. It's a really good question.
Yeah, I think that, if he moved up to super lightweight or even welterweight, I believe that, yeah, his frame's too small. He's a short guy in height, and his frame's too small as well. So I'm not sure he can go that far.
Ask Eddie the question: what will Vasiliy Lomachenko do if he beats Luke Campbell? Does he go up, or does he stay there or go down? Can he go up
in weight class?
Yes.
I think if he gets past Luke Campbell, maybe the only way he does lose is to continuously go up in weight. I mean, you're going to get to 140, 147. I mean, I think he talks about 140.
Yeah.
He's tiny, and that's one of Luke's advantages in this fight, is he's the much bigger man. I mean, he makes 147 easy. He's very, very small, but he's also strong. Don't get that mixed up. I mean, when Andre Ward, who's in the other room there asking questions for ESPN, was fighting at super middle. When he moved to light heavyweight, everyone said, "Oh, Ward's not that big. He's not that strong." He was probably one of the strongest in the division. So don't think that Vasily's not a strong lightweight, but with that much skill, who knows? But anyway, don't ask about that. Luke Campbell's going to knock him out. What's the matter with you?
And he will let go. Adam, I think we'll let you go as well. Thanks very much indeed for joining us, because we're getting everybody ready on the top table. Spencer and Andy still with me for the moment. Final thoughts, gents, just before we hear from the main men themselves. Clearly, I can't imagine there'll be any fireworks or anything between these two this afternoon, but when it gets to the ring and the two of them put it all on the line, what are going to be the most telling factors, do you think? What are going to be the one key ingredient you think that is either going to win or lose this fight for either of these two on Saturday?
I'm really interested to see what happens in the very first round, because I think he's got to set out his stall, Luke Campbell. He's got to not be reckless or gung-ho, as we said before. It is a fine line to tread, but I think that first round will tell us a lot, because if you try and feel your way into a fight against Vasiliy Lomachenko and give him the first couple, if you let him establish any kind of a rhythm, then you're done, as far as I'm concerned. He's got to be bold early.
Yeah, I mean, here's my thoughts on this one. I think that they've both got exceptional boxing IQs, and this is what it's going to come down to. It's a game of chess in there with these two guys, because their skill set is so high, and the first person that makes one little fundamental mistake will be made to pay, and that will be fight over. And that's what I believe will be here. It's about who can keep themselves together and not leak an opening at any point. That's the way that I see this fight. It's such high class of quality in there with these guys. One mistake could be crucial.
It's going to be absolutely fascinating stuff. Spencer, thank you very much indeed. Andy, thank you very much indeed as well. We'll be hearing from the main men themselves very, very soon. Up on that top table will be introduced, of course, by the legendary Michael Buffer. But stay with us. We'll be hearing from both men very, very soon.
Time, let me turn it over to Mr. Eddie Hearn.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That was Team Lomachenko down there giving me a clap. That's a bit worrying. Thank you very much. Thank you, Michael. And thank you for joining us again for our second press conference today. It's a great time for boxing. Last week, we broke the attendance record in Hermosillo, 12,000 people attending the Juan Estrada fight. This week, 18,000 people at the sold-out O2 Arena for what I believe is one of the major moments for British boxing. A chance to welcome the current pound-for-pound champion Vasiliy Lomachenko to defend his unified world titles along with the WBC title, of course, the WBO, the WBA, the Ring Magazine World Championships against the greatest amateur Britain's ever produced in Olympic gold medalist Luke Campbell at the O2 Arena. We've seen the undercard. It is stellar. It's a brilliant night of boxing, and it's an honour to promote this show, not just live on Sky Sports Box Office, but across America with ESPN+. And thank you, as always, to Bob Arum and his top-ranked team, Brad and Carl, and everybody that's done such a great job in putting this together. Thank you for both fighters for the access to the media. This is a major, major event worldwide, and a huge opportunity for British boxing, and a huge opportunity to Luke Campbell to produce a performance that will stun the world and become the unified lightweight world champion. Before we hear from everybody at the table, I'm going to quickly pass over to the head of Sky Sports Boxing, Adam Smith.
Thanks. I think you've hit the nail on the head, Eddie. It is a magnificent occasion. It really is for all of us involved in boxing, for all of us at Sky. We've been covering the sport since the early 90s. We've had some wonderful fighters over here. You know, in recent times, Gennady Golovkin when he fought Kell Brook. We had Errol Spence up in Sheffield. I think back to the days of Mike Tyson when people in Brixton were hanging out of windows just to get a sighting of him, and we took him up to Glasgow as well. To have Vasiliy Lomachenko back in London, in the place where he won his Olympic gold, or his second Olympic gold, is a treat. It really is. And it's a treat for fight fans, as we saw at the incredible atmosphere that York Hall normally provides on a fight night, but at a workout yesterday, and I'm sure Vasiliy was really touched by that. He's a special fighter. You don't have nearly 400 amateur bouts and lose just one of them and then beat the guy twice, and then look what he's done as a professional. You know, a multi-weight world champion in just a sprinkling of pro fights. He's got absolutely everything. But Luke Campbell was our best amateur of all time. We've watched him since he was a teenager. He's a fantastic talent in his own right. As a professional, he's gone over to LA. He did extremely well against Jorge Linares. We followed his career on Sky from the very beginning. Not just a lovely guy, he's a great fighter in his own right. And he carries some height and some reach, some strength in there. Of course, he's seen as a massive underdog, and it would be a monumental shock. But I know that Shane McGuigan and his tight team, with George in there as well, George Groves and Barry, and all that experience, they believe in Luke. Luke seemed relaxed to me all the way through the build-up. He's in a great place mentally and physically, and I'm sure he will give absolutely everything on Saturday night. Will it be enough to dethrone the Matrix? I don't know, we don't know, but I tell you what, it is a pleasure to have Mr. Lomachenko and his team here in London. It's going to be an amazing night on Saturday, sold out. As Eddie was saying earlier, people like Nassim Hamad wanting tickets, Vladimir Klitschko, Alexander Usyk, of course, Vasily's friend. Everybody wants to be ringside to witness a great moment in British boxing history. Can Luke Campbell achieve what will probably be the biggest upset in British boxing history? It's a massive ask, but I know he's up for the challenge, and I know Vasiliy Lomachenko is up to show us what he's all about. So we can't wait at Sky. Enjoy it.
Thank you, Adam. I'd love to pass over now to the Hall of Fame promoter, Bob Arum, to say a few words. Bob, welcome. Pleasure to have you here. Looking forward to a great show on Saturday.
Thank you very much, Eddie. You know, people say in boxing that an English fighter doesn't really become important on the world stage until he goes over and fights in America. Well, I would say to them that they may or may not be true. But for those people in America and around the world who know about boxing, a fighter doesn't become a world-class fighter until he fights in the UK. Now, Adam mentioned two fighters who fought for other promotions, Americans who came over here, Mike Tyson, Errol Spence, and they made their bones fighting in the UK. Top rank, we've had a whole string of fighters who came over here and made their name. The great Muhammad Ali, when he was in effect forced out of the country, came over here, fought Henry Cooper for the second time, then fought Brian London, and reestablished himself on the world stage. And after Ali, Marvelous Marvin Hagler came over here and defeated Minter and became the greatest middleweight of his era. And there was Donald Curry, who came over here and fought Colin Jones. And it goes on and on and on. Bud Crawford came over here and defeated Ricky Burns to win his first world title. And Vasiliy Lomachenko, who obviously is not an American, he's a Ukrainian, but has had all his fights, virtually all his fights, in the United States, now comes over to the UK, which really is the country that is most passionate and knowledgeable about the sport of boxing to exhibit his talents before the UK audience. And so, Eddie, we are, on behalf of Vasiliy Lomachenko, Igis Klimas, we're grateful for the opportunity to be over here, to be fighting in this championship match, particularly against a world-class fighter like Luke Campbell, an Olympic gold medalist, one of the premier fighters in the UK. It should be a great, great night Saturday night.
Thank you, Bob. Much appreciated. We're going to go to Team Campbell now. Shane McGuigan firstly. Shane, the build-up nearly done. We knew this was a huge task. You and Luke have seemed incredibly calm throughout the whole build-up. Camp gone well, ready for a huge night on Saturday.
Yeah, camp's gone fantastically well. He's had Josh Taylor in sparring, a world champion in a weight division above. They've done nearly 100 rounds together. He couldn't be in a better place. You know, it's going to be always hard to prepare for a guy as unique as Vasiliy Lomachenko, but I believe this is Lomachenko's hardest fight. You know, we're coming off the best form. He's huge for the weight. He could move up to 140. He's that big of a frame, and he's a boiled into the weight, and he's punching extremely hard. And I believe he's at the peak of his career right now. Luke is, you know, and he's not the same fighter he was when that boxed Jorge Linares. He's improved. He's learnt from his losses, and I believe we're going to pose the biggest threat to Lomachenko come Saturday night.
What's the biggest test against Lomachenko? Everybody talks about, you know, that he's a genius. He's pound for pound number one. About getting that game plan right. Can you have a game plan against him? How you got to execute that on the night? What's the biggest challenges going into the weekend?
Well, he poses obviously so many threats, but I think his biggest attribute is his speed. And you know, we've had to bring in real fast amateur guys to sort of replicate that speed, but they're not going to be the same as Loma. But I think I've never seen Luke out of his depth with anyone. He's always in his comfort zone, and no matter who we put him in with, he rises to their ability level. And he's, as you said, Adam, he's the best amateur to come out of Great Britain. And I think you know, this is going to be a fight full of skill, full of power, full of, you know, technical movement and speed as well. So it's going to be one of the best boxing fights to be in a boxing ring in a long time in the UK.
Thanks, Shane. Luke Campbell, welcome. Again, so calm this week. You know, everybody's talking about this fight, sold out weeks ago. I'm expecting big pay-per-view numbers as well. For you, you seem like this is just another fight. I mean, I think people forget you had the pressure of the London Olympics. You won gold for Great Britain in London during that period. But this doesn't seem to have fazed you at all, this challenge.
No, obviously, I've been through a lot with having the experience of London Olympics, the crowds and the pressure of going out there and getting a medal and winning. And obviously in the professional career, going over to America to fight Linares for a world title with everything what was going on as well. So, you know, I've learned from my experiences, and I'm here today, and boy, do I love a challenge. You know, this I've always said from for years being in boxing, to be the best, you have to beat the best, and this is certainly one of those challenges.
He is an overwhelming favourite in this fight. People are talking this is almost the Lomachenko show. Does that take the pressure off? Does that make you smile? How do you see this fight? Obviously, you and Shane see this fight as a lot more of a close affair than some of the bookmakers as well. But just, you know what you have to do to beat him, and is it just about focusing on that strategy and that performance on Saturday?
Yeah, exactly. I think, you know, you can't go in there worrying about what someone else is going to do. You've got to go in there and concentrate on yourself, and that you're not making any mistakes, and you're the best person you can be on that night, and that's what we're doing.
Finally, people talk about how you beat Vasiliy Lomachenko. Is it a case of using your size and your power to pick those right moments and to take him out on Saturday night?
I think all elements will come into it in this fight. I think that will be an element, as well as, you know, the technical side of things and speed and everything else to go with it. I think to win this fight, all elements will have to come into play, but, you know, I'm ready for it.
Again, said finally, but in the build-up to this fight, I remember we could have taken this fight in America. There was more money to do so. We spoke as a team. The fight to happen in the UK because you felt you could do it in the UK and you felt you could go down in history by defeating Lomachenko in the UK. So this isn't about the money. This isn't about, you know, the fame. This is purely about success, achieving, and going down as a true great if you win on Saturday night.
Most definitely, you know, there is no better fans than the UK fans. They just give the best atmosphere, and I'm excited to bring this fight, be part of this fight here in the UK, and yeah, I want to perform and entertain and give them a great night.
Thank you, Luke. We pass to Team Loma. Aegis first, our good friend, partners with Alexander Usyk and other fighters as well. You've been to some fights now in the UK, number of fights. Obviously, you were here last for the Usyk-Tony Bellew fight. Just an incredible place to stage major fights.
Well, it's good afternoon to everybody. Well, it's a great place to be here in UK. I've been involved in a few events here, in the promotionals and not promotionals, just visiting big fights. Last one we were with Rivas fight. Not the big names, but still crowd is unbelievable, packed out. Joshua Povetkin, and of course I'm not talking about then Usyk, which is I was involved in it, fighting Tony Bellew. And then a few years back, I had a Gradovich here fighting at the O2 Arena. So it's not for me kind of like a first time, but what I really wanted to do, I wanted to thank our promoters. I wanted to thank our promoter, Bob Arum. I wanted to thank Eddie Hearn to putting that fight together. Finally, it says the promoters can work together. It was at one point where for us, coming from a management side and from a fighters, where you cannot put fights together because two promoters cannot work together. Two networks cannot work together. And this is a really hurting boxing, really hurting. Now, looks like promoters finding a gold medal where they can work together. They can put a good matchups, good fights for the fans, which is, I think, the most important thing in this sport is the fans. Thank you very much to everybody, to promoters, to the networks, to media, for you guys putting that to the world. Let know who we are, and we'll see you Saturday night.
Thank you, Aegis. Vasiliy, I know you always keep it short with the press conferences, so I'm going to try and give you as many questions as possible. Welcome, of course. And I know that coming to the Joshua fights and seeing the Usyk fights as well, it was always a big plan for you to box in the UK. You're excited ahead of Saturday night?
Of course, I'm excited, and I can't wait to come to the ring and show my boxing skill for British fans and for fans around the world.
Obviously, you would have seen Luke Campbell on the amateur scene. You both won gold in London. You expect a tough fight, potentially one of the toughest of your career, against Luke Campbell on Saturday.
Maybe it will be harder fight for me, but I can answer after the fight. And Luke Campbell is not easy fighter. He is a top fighter. He is a smart fighter. He is technical fighter. So it will be very interesting and technical fight.
Finally, 18,000 people. We saw a lot of support for you last night. The atmosphere is going to be incredible. Are you excited? You ready? You ready to fight in front of the British fans on Saturday?
Of course I'm ready, of course. That's why I come to UK.
Thanks for that, Vasiliy. We look forward to a great show on Saturday night. Luke Campbell, Vasiliy Lomachenko, WBC, WBO, WBA, Ring Magazine titles. This is one that will be remembered for a long, long time in British boxing. Where were you the night this fight took place? Well, you can't be at the O2 Arena, but you can be watching it live on Sky Sports Box Office. The weigh-in tomorrow, 1 p.m, Spitalfields Market. It's going to be absolutely packed down there as well, so get there nice and early. Thank you again to our team at Matchroom Boxing, to the top-ranked team, to Sky, to all the broadcasters here on Saturday night. Let's have a great night, and the two fighters will face off now in front of you. Thank you very much.